In part 1 of this story, we have seen the history of Nauru Island, how it possessed this valuable natural resource called phosphate, and the businesses thrived on it, with complete disregard for the nature. Let's see further about its downfall. Apparent wealth and richness. At least on paper, Nauruans became wealthy over the next 2 decades. In 1975, Nauru's Phosphate Royalties Trust was valued at well over 1 billion Australian dollars, and the country's per capita gross domestic product was second only to Saudi Arabia. The life of Nauruans changed, the luxury and consumeristic path of Western culture, with blindly following so-called trends of the development. Government did not tax incomes, provided free education and health care, and was the main employer for Nauruans. Immigrants generally worked in mining. The government also bought cruise ships, aircraft, and overseas hotels, and the extravagance continued with excess of wealth. During this time, Nauru was also seeking compensation from Australia, New Zealand, and Britain for the damage done by mining before July 1967. After decades of delays and indifference, in 1989, Nauru took Australia to the International Court of Justice. Australia could see that Nauru had a strong case, and the parties settled out of court, with Australia agreeing to pay $57 million in 1994, as well as another $50 million over the next 20 years. Later, the UK and New Zealand each contributed $12 million to reduce Australia's burden. To some extent, this settlement was a moral and legal victory for Nauru. But considering the damage, the compensation was a financial pittance. That we will see how such a vast sum of money cannot account for the environmental damage and its repercussions on society. What Nauru did further? Trying to diversify the economy before phosphate supplies ran out, Nauru turned to offshore banking. By the mid-1990s, Nauru was also offering economic citizenship, selling Nauruan passports with little scrutiny. The Nauruan government did earn millions of dollars a year in fees. But these schemes turned Nauru into a heaven for tax evasion and money laundering. Offshore banking and selling passports could not fix Nauru's economic woes. Desperate for revenue and jobs, Nauru agreed in 2001 to allow Australia to establish a detention center on Nauru to process asylum seekers. Through the 1990s, phosphate exports had been in steady decline. In 2000, Nauru did manage to export another 5 lakh metric tons. But by 2004, Nauru's phosphate boom was truly over, with exports tallying just 22,000 metric tons. In 2005, it fell to a record low of 8,000 metric tons. Today, Nauru is still searching for a place in the world economy. Since 2006, it has upgraded mining equipment and refurbished mining infrastructure to dig out harder-to-reach phosphate. But now, the whole system stretched beyond the carrying capacity of island. It is difficult to turn back. In one of our video on concept of sustainability, we had explained such kind of problem with magic pot example. You can watch it through link provided on top right corner. Health issues. In Nauru, almost all food is imported. Even fresh water is shipped in when the desalination facility fails to meet needs. Processed and canned food makes up much of a diet, heavy in salt, sugar, and artificial ingredients. By measure of mean body mass index, BMI, Nauru has one of the world's highest obesity rates. 97% of men and 93% of women are overweight or obese. In 2012, the obesity rate was 71.7%. Nauru has the world's highest level of type 2 diabetes, with more than 40% of the population affected. Other significant dietary-related problems on Nauru include kidney disease and heart disease. It also has one of the highest rates of smoking. Alcoholism is endemic too, contributing to domestic violence and frequent drunk driving offenses, even though all of the country's roads cover just 19 miles, 30 kilometers. Displaced persons, asylum seekers, and refugees held in detention camp here is one another story for the tragedy of Nauru, but we will not cover it here. Lessons to learn. 1. Nauru is a microcosm of how demand and desire for more economic growth, more money, and more consumption, without regard to the ecosystem balance, can be brought to halt in few decades' time. 2. Here comes the sustainability question. How to meet the requirement of current generation without affecting the ability of future generations to meet their own. Once rich in resources, Nauru now can't even provide for food and water requirement of this generation. 3. Only economic growth and technological advancement would not solve any problem. The systemic considerations should be made for the solution of the problems. 4. This tragedy highlights many of mistakes on part of developed countries involved in this, as well as the native Nauruans of mismanagement and inability to come out of the unrestrained consumption of resources. We can see such kind of behavior in many other parts of world, though at different speed and different scales, but it is just matter of time, we will meet the same fate. 5. This story also highlights the importance of conducting strategic environmental assessment (SEA) and environmental impact assessment (EIA) to avert such kind of disasters. We will discuss them in detail in some other video. Reference and source. Most of the content for the video is taken from the book Environmentalism of the Rich by Peter Dauvergne. Please check it out to get more information about this issue. For other wonderful articles and resources, I have given links in the description. You can visit them to delve deeper in the issue. Your support and motivation is also essential for us to move ahead. Do like, comment your views, and subscribe to be in touch. Help your friends to realize the sustainability issues by sharing this video now. Thanks for your interest, and let us try to create an aware and sustainable world. Thank you.